Over the last decade, Hollywood has experienced a surge in legacy sequels and remakes, with major box office successes like Jurassic World and The Force Awakens, as well as critically acclaimed films such as Fury Road and Blade Runner 2049. However, not all attempts have been successful, and some have even damaged their franchises, including Terminator Genisys and notably Independence Day Resurgence, which is the focus of today's discussion. Independence Day Resurgence was so poorly received that it effectively ended the Independence Day franchise before it had a chance to establish a lasting sequel. In this analysis, I want to revisit the film, explore the background and history of the franchise, examine the reasons behind its failure, and share some personal insights on the project. To understand why Resurgence faltered, we first need to look back at the original Independence Day film, which laid the foundation for the franchise. The concept originated in 1994 with two creative minds, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, who, during the promotion of their earlier film Stargate, imagined a scenario where enormous alien spacecraft, about 15 miles wide, suddenly appeared over the world's major cities. This idea evolved through their conversations into a more detailed script that they wrote together over a 2-month vacation in Mexico. The project quickly gained momentum when 20th Century Fox chairman Peter Chernin immediately greenlit the film, with pre-production starting in early 1995. Initially, Ethan Hawke was approached for the lead role of Captain Stephen Hiller, but declined, considering the script poor, which eventually led to Will Smith being cast. The film also featured Bill Pullman as President Thomas J. Whitmore, Jeff Goldblum as David Levinson, Randy Quaid as Russell Cass, and Brent Spiner as Dr. Brackish Oaken. Principal photography began in July 1995, with filming locations across the United States, including Nevada, Utah, California, and New Jersey. At the time of its release, Independence Day set a new standard for special effects, boasting 3,000 effects shots, a record at that time. The production budget reached approximately $75 million, which would be about $155 million when adjusted for inflation to 2025, excluding the substantial marketing costs. Fox invested heavily in promotion, exemplified by their $1.3 million spend on a trailer aired during the 1996 Super Bowl, a strategy that helped popularize the trend of studios using Super Bowl commercials to promote blockbuster films. Independence Day premiered on July 3, 1996, and quickly became a massive hit, opening with $50 million and dominating the box office for 4 consecutive weeks. It earned $306 million domestically and $511 million internationally, totaling $817 million worldwide, which would equal roughly $1.7 billion in 2025 dollars. This impressive box office performance made it the highest-grossing film of 1996, surpassing hits like Twister and Mission Impossible. Additionally, it achieved great success in the home video market, and alongside Twister, spurred a wave of large-scale disaster movies, many directed by Roland Emmerich himself, establishing a significant trend in Hollywood. While Emmerich was busy working on other films, the idea of a sequel to Independence Day lingered in his mind, and official work on the script began in 2003. However, in 2004, during the promotion of The Day After Tomorrow, both Emmerich and Devlin revealed that they had stopped working on the sequel because they couldn't find a natural way to continue the story. This led to a hiatus of several years until 2009, when Emmerich announced he had resumed work on the sequel, this time envisioning 2 films that would form a trilogy. He even proposed the titles ID Forever Part 1 and 2. However, progress was again stalled in 2011 when it was reported that Will Smith demanded $50 million for the 2 sequels, a sum Fox was unwilling to pay. Despite this, Emmerich and Fox decided to push ahead with the project, regardless of Smith's involvement. By 2013, Emmerich and Devlin confirmed the film was still in development, sharing plot details that revealed the story would take place 20 years after the original events and focus on a new generation of heroes, including the stepson of Smith's character. Screenwriter James Vanderbilt was brought on to assist with the script, and 2 versions were written, one featuring Smith's character and one without, depending on whether they could secure his participation. Although Smith briefly considered returning, he ultimately chose to star in Suicide Squad instead. The script underwent further rewrites in May 2014 by Carter Blanchard, and again in November by James A. Woods and Nicholas Wright, who were collaborating with Emmerich on a Stargate reboot at the time. Shortly after these revisions, the film was officially greenlit and titled Independence Day: Resurgence. Casting began in early 2015, bringing back Bill Pullman, Brent Spiner, and Jeff Goldblum, alongside supporting actors like Vivica A. Fox as Jasmine Dubrow and Judd Hirsch as Julius Levinson. The new generation of heroes was led by Liam Hemsworth as pilot Jake Morrison, with Jesse T. Usher playing Dylan Hiller, the stepson of Snick's character, and Micah Monroe as Patricia Whitmore, daughter of Pullman's character. Filming started on April 20, 2015, and wrapped up in August, with locations spanning Utah, Nevada, London, Dubai, Singapore, and Los Angeles, though most of the production took place in New Mexico due to tax incentives. By the end of filming, the budget was estimated at around $165 million, not including marketing, distribution, or theater cuts, which often require a movie to double its initial budget to break even. Independence Day: Resurgence was released on June 24, 2016, earning $41 million during its opening weekend and ranking second at the box office behind Finding Dory, which was in its second week. The following weekend, coinciding with Independence Day itself, the film dropped to fifth place domestically, trailing behind The Legend of Tarzan, The Purge election year, and the BFG. It earned $103 million in the US and $286 million overseas, totaling a worldwide gross of $389 million. While this performance prevented it from being an outright box office bomb, analysts considered it a disappointment due to the high production and marketing costs. Furthermore, as will be discussed in the next section, critical reviews were even harsher, cementing the film's reputation as a failure. Let's delve into what happened to the Independence Day franchise after the disappointing performance of its sequel and examine several reasons why it failed to make a lasting impression on audiences and critics alike. In a June 2016 interview, director Roland Emmerich hinted that a third film was possible, contingent on the success of the second installment, and reassured fans it wouldn't require a 20-year wait as before, promising a quicker turnaround to keep momentum alive. The planned third movie, as teased at the end of Resurgence, was intended to take the story off Earth and embark on an intergalactic adventure with the same main cast, exploring new and exciting extraterrestrial environments and deeper lore about the alien invaders. However, after Resurgence flopped at the box office and failed to meet financial expectations, these ambitious plans were quietly shelved without further development. In 2018, producer Dean Devlin confirmed that there were no plans to move forward with a third film, citing the underwhelming reception and lack of fan enthusiasm as key factors. And when Disney acquired Fox in 2019, Emmerich believed the chances of a continuation were effectively over, with the new management likely prioritizing other properties. Of course, Disney is known for capitalizing on franchises, so while a spin-off or reboot might appear in the future, as of now, there is no news of a third Independence Day movie in any stage of production. Emmerich openly expressed his dissatisfaction with Resurgence during the promotion of his 2019 film Midway, admitting that the production was hampered significantly when Will Smith withdrew mid-shoot to work on Suicide Squad, forcing a rushed rewrite that compromised the film's narrative cohesion and ultimately lowered its overall quality. Several factors contributed to Resurgence's underperformance, starting with weaker marketing compared to the original film, which had iconic imagery such as the destruction of the White House that became ingrained in pop culture and sparked widespread anticipation. Resurgence's trailers failed to deliver memorable or compelling visuals, instead relying on the idea that bigger scale alone would generate excitement, resulting in a lackluster impression that did little to engage potential viewers. Unlike other successful legacy sequels at the time, such as Creed, which introduced a fresh protagonist and revitalized the franchise, Jurassic World, which presented new characters and scenarios that expanded the universe, and even The Force Awakens, which, while a remake, offered intriguing new heroes and villains interacting in a revitalized setting. Resurgence offered little innovation beyond some uninspiring young characters and a promise of same story, bigger effects, which felt stale and uninspired to audiences hungry for originality. Additionally, Resurgence faced stiff competition amid a crowded market of sequels and remakes, following both hits like The Jungle Book, The Conjuring 2, and Finding Dory, as well as flops like Ghostbusters and Neighbors 2. With so many recognizable brands vying for attention during the summer blockbuster season, the weaker films naturally fell by the wayside due to diminished marketing clout and limited audience interest. Compounding these issues, Fox delayed releasing reviews until the last minute, which stifled early buzz and suggested a lack of confidence in the film's quality and appeal. Forbes highlighted this misstep, noting that withholding reviews until just before release created a negative impression that it was as bad as the notoriously poor film R.I.P.D., and that sometimes no publicity can be worse than bad publicity, especially when it results in a scarcity of domestic media coverage, interviews, or articles that could have generated interest and anticipation. 2 weeks before its release, the only public story about Independence Day Resurgence was that it was being deliberately kept away from the press, a strategy that ultimately undermined its box office potential and left it struggling to find a foothold among audiences. One major advantage the original film had in its marketing was that it never revealed what the aliens looked like, creating an intriguing mystery that drew audiences to theaters during its opening weekend. Independence Day Resurgence, on the other hand, faced a significant disadvantage in this regard. Additionally, a key appeal of the original was its unique and groundbreaking special effects. But by the time Resurgence was released, audiences had already seen all the visual tricks it offered. The disaster genre itself was also struggling by 2016, with only a few movies managing to break even in the past decade, largely because they incorporated elements beyond just disasters, like those seen in the MonsterVerse films. The era of over-the-top, Roland Emmerich-style disaster movies had come to an end, for better or worse. Another factor that likely deterred many viewers was the absence of Will Smith, whose legacy is deeply tied to the original Independence Day, which was one of the first blockbusters to establish him as a major star. This is similar to what happened with the Men in Black franchise when Smith was missing. His presence is closely linked to the brand's success. His absence in Resurgence was felt strongly since the sequel's leads lacked his charisma and star power, with Liam Hemsworth in particular not being a compelling lead or box office draw. Moreover, the decision to kill off Will Smith's character off-screen was poorly received and felt like a slight to fans of the original. Ultimately, however, the biggest reason the sequel failed is simply that it wasn't a good movie. The critical and audience reception speaks volumes. It holds a Rotten Tomatoes score of just 28% from critics and 30% from audiences, a 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb, and a low 2.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. At the Golden Raspberry Awards, it was nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Supporting Actress for Sela Ward, who played the president for only 5 seconds, and Worst Prequel, Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel. The film failed to generate positive word of mouth and didn't resonate with critics, general audiences, or fans alike. While the sequel does have some supporters, they were not numerous enough to save it from failure. The overwhelming consensus is that the movie is simply bad, and my own opinion aligns with this. I hated it. So, let me take a moment to explain exactly why I think this movie is so disappointing. Before I proceed to thoroughly critique this film, let me first provide a brief summary of the plot. Spoiler alert. The story unfolds 2 decades after the original alien invasion, during which humans have harnessed some of the remaining alien technology to advance their society and military capabilities. A new alien ship, shaped like a steer, emerges from a wormhole, and humanity's instinct is to shoot first and ask questions later. While retrieving the core of this downed ship, the aliens from the first movie return with an enormous spacecraft and effortlessly destroy Earth's defenses. Consequently, the main characters must unite to combat this renewed alien menace. This time, the alien ships are larger and far more advanced than before. However, the large white sphere from the first ship they shot down is revealed to be another alien from a different planet, an enemy of the evil aliens, who has come to aid humanity. These benevolent aliens threaten the evil ones, who in turn must locate and eliminate this new ally. To accomplish this, humans devise a plan to lure the alien queen out by using a fake friendly alien as bait. After several failed attempts, they finally succeed in killing the queen, once again saving the world. The film ends with a tease for a sequel that realistically will never materialize. Last week, while reviewing King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, I criticized the film for having far too many characters crammed into a short runtime. However, compared to Resurgence, King Arthur feels like a simple children's game. The sheer number of characters packed into this movie is utterly absurd. Not only are there over 10 main characters, but many of these also have sidekicks, and some of those sidekicks have romantic interests. This problem is a recurring theme in Roland Emmerich's films, but it is taken to an extreme level here. The constant back and forth between numerous plotlines and characters means the audience barely has any time to emotionally invest in any of their struggles. The original Independence Day also featured a large cast, but it succeeded in two critical ways. First, it made you care about several key characters, and second, most of those characters played essential roles in advancing the plot. In Resurgence, entire subplots and characters could easily be removed without impacting the storyline at all. The most glaring example is the character played by Judd Hirsch, who is the father of Jeff Goldblum's character. He is given an entire subplot where he looks after children who are separated from their parents, rescues a school bus full of kids, and miraculously reunites with his son in the middle of nowhere. This subplot contributes absolutely nothing to the overall story, and seems to exist solely to fill screen time. It genuinely felt like the filmmakers were contractually obligated to include Hirsch, but only realized this after the script was completed, leading to the addition of a random, pointless side quest that adds no value to the film. The supposed main character appears to be Liam Hemsworth's role, though calling him the protagonist feels misleading, since he is more of a character who simply has more screen time than others. His character is essentially a carbon copy of Maverick from Top Gun, a reckless pilot who disregards rules and wants to be a badass flying spaceships. Unfortunately, Hemsworth brings absolutely no charisma to the role. The film also forces a government-mandated love interest on him and creates tension between his character and Jesse T. Usher's character. Despite all this, viewers remain indifferent to Jake Morrison, which is this character's name. In fact, his entire backstory is easily forgotten by the time the narrative returns to him after cutting away to catch up with the other myriad characters cluttering the film. The script and dialogue in this movie are absolutely dreadful, as if a group of monkeys were locked in a room with typewriters and the filmmakers just used the first draft without bothering to edit or review it before filming. The film falls into the common trap of terrible movies, where characters feel the need to recite their entire history with each other every time they interact, supposedly to bring the audience up to speed. This approach is incredibly lazy and delivered in a way that makes it seem like Roland Emmerich is forcing the actors at gunpoint. Speaking as a side note, if it's not obvious yet, I really dislike Roland Emmerich's movies, and unfortunately, I've had to watch far more of them than any person should in a lifetime. It's astonishing to me that the same director who made this film also directed the original Independence Day, which I actually enjoy. However, this sequel, Resurgence, doesn't come close to matching the entertainment value of the first. The movie also tries to inject humor through characters like Jake's childhood best friend and an attorney who are supposed to be comic relief, but every time they appear on screen, they just make me feel irritated and angry. The film's internal rules are wildly inconsistent as well. While the first movie wasn't exactly groundbreaking, at least it maintained some level of consistency. For example, the ships had force fields that couldn't be penetrated until a computer virus disabled them, a straightforward concept. In contrast, this sequel's force fields work sporadically, turning on and off whenever the plot demands. The most infuriating moment is when the alien queen takes multiple nuclear explosions to the chest without any effect, only for the force field to suddenly fail after a pilot fires at it briefly. This kind of nonsense is beyond ridiculous. There are some intriguing ideas in the film, but they're completely undermined by baffling execution. The concept of humanity advancing through alien technology is interesting, but it's immediately negated when the evil aliens arrive with technology that's even more advanced. This highlights another problem with Resurgence. The filmmakers seem to think that simply making everything bigger and more extravagant makes the movie better. The new spaceship is an absurd 3,000 miles long. Cities are destroyed on a massive scale, and the alien queen is as tall as a skyscraper. Yet all this spectacle feels hollow because none of the characters are engaging. They're essentially walking exposition machines, spouting cliches and tired phrases we've heard countless times before. It's one thing to lean into cliches with a sense of humor, but when a director like Emmerich does this repeatedly across all his films, it just comes off as lazy and insulting to the audience. To top it all off, the film ends with a blatant tease for a sequel, which feels like the final insult. There's no moment to process the events that just unfolded before a scientist suddenly appears and rambles on about a galaxy-wide rebellion against the evil aliens and continuing the fight. The filmmakers don't even bother to properly conclude the story they're telling before rushing to set up the next installment and chase more profits. This infuriates me, and I'm glad the film failed, although I believe it deserved to fail even more spectacularly. It has no real purpose other than to be a weak cash grab, and it shows in every aspect of the movie. All right, I've already spent more time talking about this movie than I planned, so it's time to wrap things up. Independence Day, Resurgence, was a huge disappointment that pretty much everyone expected. The studio couldn't get Will Smith back on board, which was a big blow. It never reached the heights of the original film's marketing success. And ultimately, it was just a poorly made movie that failed to generate positive buzz. Because of this, it bombed at the box office and seriously hurt the Independence Day franchise's reputation. That's why it's considered yet another example of a franchise killer. What do you think about Resurgence? Have you seen it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Here's a hint for next week's video. Look at all the pretty teeth. There's a little blood and some gum on them.